All right, Shalom. This is the brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah. And a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word, in all truth and in sincerity. Real quick before I begin, this is Jeremiah chapter 9 and verse 24. I'll start at 23. It says, "Thus saith the Lord, let not the wise man glory in his wisdom, neither let the mighty man glory in his might. Let not the rich man glory in his riches, but let him that glorieth glory in this, that he understandeth and knoweth me, that I am the Lord which exercise loving kindness, judgment, and righteousness in the earth. For in these things I delight, saith the Lord." All right, and I want to go into a lesson through the Spirit on the Lord requiring faith. You know, ultimately, this isn't about what you know, how much of what you know. All right, ultimately, it's about the faith, having faith in Yahweh by Shema Shai. All right, that's why the Lord said, let the wise man not glory in his wisdom. You know, the Lord has given us a gift of faith. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. All the information that we receive is to strengthen what's already in you, Lord willing. But if the gift of faith is not in you, it don't matter what kind of precepts you bring out, what kind of history you bring out, that person is not going to get it because they don't have that gift of faith. All right, that's ultimately what it's about. You know, I'll never forget, you know, that Elder Ariala in Dallas mentioned that this is not an information grab. You know, this isn't something that you come to look deep. You know, this is real. You know, it's not a game. You know, but a lot of times Jake will get in and they think that it's about gathering information and being able to recite information. And that's ultimately not what it's about. It's really, there's a gift of faith. The ministry is meant to build up the faith that's already in the elect. All right, this is Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. It says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of Yahweh by Shema Shai, not of works, lest any man should boast." Because again, that faith is a gift. Now, the world has certain things concerning knowledge that back up the scriptures, but ultimately everything that we have as far as the information we get is meant to build up the faith that should already be inside of you. You know, when Jacob's trouble happens, the 4 generals of Alexander is going to be irrelevant at that point. And if all you thought it was about was being able to recite information and look deep, then you missed the mark. All right. Matter of fact, let me get this in Proverbs. This is Proverbs chapter 4. It's like it. No, that's not what I want. Yeah. Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 7. All right. And it reads, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, get understanding." All right. And when you really look at it, the understanding is the milk of it. You don't really need a super deep breakdown of the milk. You know, you can go deep, but it's not necessary. What profit is there if you know all of these dates in history and you don't know what the mark of the beast is? Or you can recite or you can remember all these precepts, but you don't understand what the mark of the beast is and who the 7 heads and the 10 horns are. All right, you don't understand the prophecies, how to conduct yourself in the time that we're living in. That's extremely important, and it's more important than looking deep. And see, that's how a lot of Jakes are deceived, because dealing with a lot of these entry-level camps, they deceive a lot of Jakes because they throw a lot of information at Jake. And Jake gets amazed at the information, and they don't realize that with all of your getting, you're not getting any understanding. Because knowing you're an Israelite is not the finish line. You also have to know how to conduct yourself in the time that we're living in. And this is why it requires faith. Ultimately, it requires faith. All right, the world is looking for some super deep, technical, articulate breakdown of the scriptures. And ultimately, the Lord used the foolishness of preaching to confound those people. All right, let me go here. This is 1 Corinthians 1 And I'm going to jump to 19, but I want to read this in the NLT. All right, so this is 1 Corinthians 1 and 19 in the NLT. It says, as the scriptures say, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise and discard the intelligence of the intelligent. So where does this leave the philosophers, the scholars, and the world's brilliant debaters? The Most High has made the wisdom of this world look foolish. Since the Most High in his wisdom saw to it that the world would never know him through human wisdom, he has used our foolish preaching to save those who believe. Because if you're judging this according to the wisdom of this world, of course this is going to confound you. You know, they talked about how the disciples, the apostles, were perceived to be unlearned and ignorant men in Acts the 4th chapter. That's by design. All right. The Lord has used the foolishness of preaching, all right, to save those who already have the gift of faith, which means it's not about your wisdom. It's not about what you know. It's truly about the faith. The fear of Yahweh Shema Shai and the faith in the Heavenly Father's words, that these things will come to pass. All the other information that the Lord has allowed us to receive and to recite, all right, that back up what we already know in the scriptures, is meant to build up the faith that should already exist inside of you. All right, now let me continue. I'm going to read verse 21 again. 1 Corinthians 1 and 21 again. And the NLT says, since the Most High in his wisdom saw to it that the world would never know him through human wisdom, he has used our foolish preaching to save those who believe. Think about this, right? The Lord didn't allow us to have to go into a certain part of creation. What I mean by that is you have oceanographers, all right, you have archaeologists, all right, you have certain biologists that can study deeply the works of the Heavenly Father and still miss the mark. Still not see that the Lord is present. Why? Because they don't have the gift of faith. These are people that are perceived to be super deep according to the standard of this world. They're perceived to be super deep people. However, when you look at the world that we live in today through the Spirit and power Yahweh Shema Shai, it's not about looking deep. It's not about the ones who have gathered a lot of information. Because you got biologists who have spent 30, 40 years in the study of biology, but they can't perceive. They're atheists. How is that possible? Because it was never about the information. It was never about what you think you know. It's always been about the gift of faith from the beginning. All right, matter of fact, let me go here real quick. This is Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13. So this is Wisdom of Solomon chapter 13 and verse 1. And it reads, surely vain are all men by nature, who are ignorant of the Most High, and could not out of the good things that are seen know him that is. Neither by considering the works did they acknowledge the work master. All right, and that's the world in a nutshell. You know, the world believes that they can, if the Lord exists, they should be able to learn their way to the Heavenly Father. They should be able to study their way into learning about it, Yahweh Shema Shai. And that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is the Lord chooses. All right. And that's why the gift of faith is so important. You know, let me go here real quick and then I'll jump back. This is Isaiah 65 and 4. Blessed is the man whom thou choosest and causest to approach unto thee, that he may dwell in thy courts. We shall be satisfied with the goodness of thy house, even of thy holy temple. And I bring this out to show that the Lord has chosen. And those who the Lord has chosen have the gift of faith. Now, to someone without faith, those people who have that faith will look crazy. This is a world covered in gross darkness, where seeing is believing. And the Lord has protected his truth and his understanding behind the paywall of faith. That's why you need faith to understand this. And without the gift of faith, you won't understand it. That's why ultimately Yahweh Shema Shai has given the elect that gift. And through that gift of faith, all right, we're able to understand the times that we're living in. The eye solve. All right, matter of fact, let's go here. This is Revelation chapter 3. And I'm going to jump down to verse 18. It says, I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear, and anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see. So the Lord has given the gift of faith, and through the faith, there's a trust in the vision that the Heavenly Father has laid out according to prophecy. That gives the elect the ability to see what's going on. And they didn't receive that based on studying their way into it. The scriptures say, study to show thyself approved. But ultimately, you have to have that gift of faith to begin with. Otherwise, none of this information will profit. And that's the beauty of what the Lord is doing. The Lord is frustrating the tokens of people who consider themselves wise according to this world standard with his word. And he's made his word look foolish to people who are truly foolish. All right, let me go back to 1 Corinthians, the first chapter. All right, I'm going to jump down. All right, 1 Corinthians 1 and 25. It says, this foolish plan, and I'm reading in the NLT, 1 Corinthians 1 and 25. It says, this foolish plan of the Most High is wiser than the wisest of human plans. And the Most High's weakness is stronger than the greatest of human strength. Remember, dear brothers and sisters, that few of you were wise in the world's eyes, or powerful, or wealthy, when the Most High called you. Instead, the Most High chose things the world considers foolish in order to shame those who think they are wise. And he chose things that are powerless to shame those who are powerful. The Most High chose things despised by the world, things counted as nothing at all, and used them to bring to nothing what the world considers important. Man, that's fire. Because this word didn't come from these scholars. This word didn't come from Ivy League institutions. This word didn't come attached with PhDs and bachelor degrees. That was intentional. These are things the world considers important. If this word came out of Harvard or some Ivy League institution, all of our people would believe it. But because the message comes out of those who are perceived to be unlearned and ignorant men, nobody cares about the opinion of so-called Negroes, Latino, and Native American men at all in this world. Well, the Lord is using that to bring to naught things that are considered important. When you zoom out, it's elegant how the Lord is doing this. Here it is. The truth is on the highways and hedges in a way that people can receive it. It may be viewed as ignorant, all right, as carnal, as unlearned. But when people actually have a personal conversation with us and we go precept upon precept, nobody can gainsay or resist it. But really, the Lord made this truth look this way to confound things that people look at as important. And only those who have the gift of faith are going to be able to receive this message and to present their bodies as a living sacrifice. It's not because they've learned their way to that point. It's because the gift of faith was given to them. And they've been given the ability to allow the Spirit to have free course within them. All right. Matter of fact, let me see. This is this is Galatians 6 and 16. And as many as walk according to this rule, peace be on them and mercy and upon the Israel of Yahweh Shema Shai. Because the Israel of the Heavenly Father has the gift of faith. Not all Israel is of Israel, because 2/3 of our people don't possess the gift of faith. It wasn't given to them. That's why Yahweh Shah said in Matthew the 13th chapter, it's given unto you to know the mysteries, but unto them it is not given. That requires the gift of faith. Yahweh Shah saying, ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you. That is the gift of faith. And there's no amount of information you can pour upon a person who lacks faith to convince them that this is the truth. This is where we are in prophecy. A part of prophecy is that you're going to be surrounded by disbelief. And there's nothing you can say to those people if they don't have the gift of faith to make them believe. You know, when we first started off in the truth, I'll speak for myself personally. You know, I used to kind of go home after certain interactions with people and be like, man, I should have brought this precept out. Damn, I should have, playing the tape back in my head, running back my game tape, so to speak. Like, man, I should have brought out, Isaiah 45. I should have. But then you really get to the point where you realize if the gift of faith ain't in them, it don't matter. All right. Matter of fact, let me get this. Bear with me. This is 1 Corinthians 3:6. I have planted, Apollos watered, but the Most High gave the increase. All right. And the reason I wanted to bring this out and search it out is because ultimately it don't matter what precept you bring out if they don't have the gift of faith. Now, on the other side of that is if they do have the gift of faith, 1 or 2 precepts is really all it takes for that seed to be sown. And if it's good ground, it's going to grow. They may have to go watch their own videos. They may have to do certain, but once that seed of faith is activated, then the race begins for that person. But it's all up to Yahweh Shem Yahushai. Everything that we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Yahushai is to serve toward the elect. Lord willing, we be a part of that number. Because the elect are out here somewhere. And that's why the scriptures talk about prophesying to the wind if necessary. Because it's about the gift of faith that's already given to the elect. It's not about what you know and how much you know. All right, the Lord don't care about how deep a Jake is, man. It matters if you're meat for the master's use. And at the end of the day, it's all about the faith of the saints. The patience. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. Not here's the patience and the knowledge of the saints. And I'm just bringing this out through the spirit because we were having this conversation on the highways and hedges last night. When you really think about it, the Lord requires faith at the foundation of all of this. All of this is about faith. I remember the Apostle Tahar's interaction with Vocab Malone. And our apostle went to it. He basically broke it down like this is all a matter of faith. We're going to see. Because ultimately, the knowledge that we have through the Spirit is meant to reinforce our faith for the time that we're coming into. All right, redeeming the time. Let me get this. This is Ephesians chapter 5 and 15. And it reads, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Now in the NLT it reads, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Because a part of the faith and the trust that we have is that the Lord is going to see us through the time that we're living in. And it requires an understanding of prophecy to see what's going to happen next in the life that we're living in the time that we're living in. So we're not offended when these things do happen. That is of the utmost importance. That's why it's not about how deep you is. It's always about, it always has been about the faith. All the information our apostles bring out, the deep things, all of it is to reinforce what you already should have in you, which is the gift of faith, Lord willing. The information along with the trials that you go through the Spirit are preparing you for the time that we're coming into. All right, real quick. This is 1 Corinthians 11 and 32. And it reads, but when we are judged, we are chastened of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world. All right, so we're going through our chastening. And through that chastening, our trust in the Heavenly Father is being strengthened. The things that we go into, whether it's the Esau's plans and, the World War III and the geopolitics, all of that's just to reinforce the faith that's already in you, to remind you of the time that we're living in. Not to be some super deep, Space Nine Israelite. Because ultimately this information through the Spirit is supposed to be used to reinforce our faith, all right, and to be our stability when these things actually play out in real life. All right, it's Romans chapter 15 and 4. For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. Not might look deep, but might have hope. All right, because you got brothers that super deep, man. But it's not the requirement. All right. And really all of that information that certain brothers who have been given those multiple talents, they've been given that to give to the flock to reinforce what? The gift of faith. It goes back to the same thing. Now, when you get this Greek word for hope, elpis or elpis, it says expectation of evil, fear. Here it is, expectation of good, hope, which is what the Lord is exhorting us to have. Hope. Everything that we're learning through the Spirit is supposed to reinforce our faith in the Heavenly Father. All right, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 2 and 9. Ye that fear the Lord, hope for good and for everlasting joy and mercy. And all the information the Lord has given us is to reinforce that, to remind us of what the Lord has done for us in past time, so that we can be confident in the Lord in the time that we're coming into. Matter of fact, nah, that's not what I'm looking for. Bear with me, Slakia. Yep, the Wadi Al-Bashim al-Shad is Ecclesiastes 19 and 24. He that hath small understanding and feareth the Most High is better than one that hath much wisdom and transgresseth the law of the Most High. All right, with that point being, it's better to have small understanding with the fear of the Lord than to be a space non-Israelite and you wicked. You know, you could do 6-hour breakdowns, but you behind closed doors, you being a deviant. And this should show you that it's not about what you know. It's truly about what you apply. And ultimately, what you should be applying is faith in Yahweh Shema Ushai. That becomes the common denominator. Our faith and belief in Yahweh Shema Ushai. All right, so Lord willing, this was edifying. With that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasha Allah, and a sincere salutation to all you Akim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word in all truth and in sincerity. Shalom.